So it is 1 year anniversary of Into the Green. And maybe it appears I'm over dramatizing such a simple little album. And I am. Ha! Oh, I love that echo. The acoustics out here are absolutely amazing. Anyway, it's been a year. It is October 6th, 2023. And I thought I would record just a little thing. Because here's why. Not only was that album kind of the turning point of the Kathy and Kevin show in terms of that was our first few months on the land. And it was the first album since 2007. And when I say turning point, I mean that because it was like God was wooing me back to, hey, I gave you this talent. I, meaning God, gave you this talent. And I want you to do these things. And I mean, you don't hear those words in your head. It's not like, I'm not a prophet. I don't hear that. But you get promptings. You feel in your heart kind of what he wants you to do. And after Into the Green came, I believe, Emmanuel, Acoustic Hymns Volume 2, Acoustic Hymns Volume 3, and right now I'm 5 songs into Acoustic Hymns Volume 4, and I have enough hymns on paper, and I just split them up arbitrarily into 10, well, not that arbitrarily, I do some thinking, but 10 hymns per album, and so I'm working on 4. I have enough for 5, 6, and 7. So 30 more, 35 if you count the 5 that are going to happen. But I thought I would show you how pretty it is today. The other reason I'm doing this is because I was sitting there drinking my cup of joe, and the colors are so pretty. It's fall up here. Here's that fateful little area where we did it all. And again, not trying to over dramatize that album, but I don't know. And here's the thing. Since that year ago, I have picked apart the video we did and the audio, especially out on, on the major streaming platforms, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. It's not mastered sound level. The album Into the Green is not mastered where it should be. It's not loud enough. Now, that said, I'm not one that wants to participate in the loudness wars, okay? Because music nowadays, we're in the year 2023, music, especially popular music, is now so, quote, loud, and it's relative. You can play popular music, like just pick a name, Taylor Swift, I don't care. You can play it quietly, but the pressure of the level that they pushed it to with compression and whatnot is just one solid, massive, compressed, just before distortion sound. And what happens when you do that is you lose all of the dynamics. And so that was what I didn't want to lose Into the Green. And so that's why I didn't push the compression as high as I could have. Now, since then, I have found a good compression setting within Logic Pro on the Mac. I have found a good compression setting which gives me a good, beefy, nice level, but still allows dynamics above it and below it. And so you can hear that on probably the best example would be Acoustic Hymns Volume 3. But Volume 4, I'm using the same compression settings. So if you go out to SoundCloud and listen to the first 5 tracks on Acoustic Hymns Volume 4, or go back and listen to Acoustic Hymns Volume 3, that's probably, unless somebody tells me different or I decide, that's probably the level I'm going to stay at for a while because I like it there. And so anyway, I just thought I would say, what else did I learn? Let's see. Learned some things with a little EQ, not a lot, just a little bit of changes in EQ, give it a little bottom end, pull down a little bit of the mid. I still am sold, I mean sold, on the Hamburg preset of the Yamaha CP88 and how it's a Steinway. So, and it's beautiful. It has the woody sound, it's crisp. I love the bottom end, the bass notes. I don't know if it's me, and see, you got to be careful when you do all this self-producing and you listen to something over and over and over and over and over and over and over, you can almost develop a blind spot. And maybe I have a blind spot for the Hamburg preset, but to me, it is the cleanest, clearest of all of the grand pianos on that keyboard. Now, the S700, to be fair, has a nice, warm, yummy sound to it. I think the CF3 has a decent sound, but the other ones seem to me to be, they can get muddy. They can get lost. Whereas the Steinway, or the Hamburg, excuse me, is clean all up and down the keyboard. It's just uncanny. And that's not even a grand piano Yamaha makes. They don't make Steinway. They can't call it a Steinway. They get sued. So yeah, here I am using a Yamaha keyboard to play a Steinway piano. It's weird, man. Life is so weird. But anyway, so I upped the bass a little, pulled the mids down just a little, and we're talking hardly any at all, but just enough for my taste. The reverb is a reverb called Relab. I think it's called Relab. And it is a faithful, they claim, reproduction of, I believe, Lexicon reverbs back in the day. So when I was a kid and into high school, college, this video's, as usual, is going way beyond what I envisioned was a 5-minute catching you up on what's gone on since that year, a year ago. But anyway, Relab is a reverb. I believe it emulates the old Lexicons. And it's funny because you would buy these rack mount machines, you know, this rack mount thing that, my arm's getting tired, I'm getting old. And this little rack mount thing was a reverb in a box. And they weren't cheap either. Lexicon made a bunch of beautiful, beautiful reverbs. And so I used Relab for the reverb of Acoustic Hymns Volume 3, 2, 3, and beyond. Emmanuel, the Christmas album, uses the reverb on the CP88 itself, as does Into the Green. And I later decided to swap out. Now, okay, no offense. I hope no Yamaha engineers are listening to this. Yamaha, I love your keyboards. I will go to my casket proclaiming the beauty of your keyboards, but your reverb is just not where I like it. There, I said it. So, everything else is fantastic. Okay, now, finally, future. What am I working on? I already told you, Acoustic Hymns Volume 4, and then there'll be 5, 6, and 7. But I'm starting to look at analog synthesizers like Behringer. And, okay, that's a whole nother subject. We could go off and do a whole video on Behringer products. Back when I was responsible for the PA systems of all the bands I was in, and I was in 3-piece, 4-piece, 2-piece, all these different bands over the last, 10 to 15 years. I would buy Behringer equipment sometimes, and then I was JBL sometimes, I was QSC, and people mock Behringer. Oh, that's cheap crap. Well, number one, it's not. It is inexpensive, and sometimes you might, in their early days, you might be able to argue that some of Behringer's stuff maybe was a little bit on the cheap side, but not the stuff I bought. I loved it. Well, what they started doing is reproducing the old analog synthesizers from the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s and to a degree, the 90s. So Moog, I think it's pronounced Moog, but M-O-O-G, Moog synthesizers. Korg, Roland, um, Ensoniq. Oh, I could wax philosophical about Ensoniq. I had an Ensoniq Mirage keyboard, and it was the first affordable, $2,500 for a 12-bit sampling keyboard. That's hilarious compared to today. But anyway, Behringer has started to produce reproductions of mini Moogs, the Korg DW6000, and I can't remember all the synth names back in those. Poly D, and the one I want is the ARP Odyssey. When I was in college, a kid had an ARP. I don't think it was the Odyssey. I think it was the other famous ARP. There was two ARP keyboards that were pretty famous for their time, and there was a kid that was like me. I don't think he was in the music program. Neither was I, and he had an ARP synth. I haven't talked about this a lot ever on my website. Nowhere can it be found that Kevin B. Selby had a Moog Prodigy, a monophonic analog synthesizer. And yes, it would go out of tune because they were oscillators, they were analog oscillators, and that was true of all analog synthesizers back in the day. This thing's now up to 11 and a half minutes. Yay. For a little 5-minute ditty. Well, this is kind of cool because I'm telling you where I'm going after 2023. By the way, if we make it past 2024, I think all Hades is about to break loose. Starting November 4th, 2023, going to November 4th, 2024. I am in America. I am an American. And all heck is going to be breaking loose politically on this landscape. And of course, depending on your beliefs, if you believe American politics kind of, for good or for bad, drives world politics, then yeah, the world's going to go crazy. So yeah, fun. But if we make it past that, my goal is to pick up a Behringer Poly D, and then one of the Behringer ARP clones. The Odyssey would be fun. And then I had another one in there that I was looking at that I wanted, because I want to have a follow-up to Palouse, and I think I'll name it Idaho, because this is Idaho. You're looking at Idaho. I'll name it Idaho. It'll be smooth jazz tunes that I wrote, and I hope to either use the Behringer analog synthesizers on it, or I have a subscription to UVI. UVI makes a bunch of software simulations of the old synthesizers. And since I have a subscription, it's like $24 a month. I would recommend that to other musicians. If you can't afford all the physical synthesizers, because the Behringer ones are physical. I mean, it'll be a literal physical synthesizer with keys on it that I will play, and I'll route the audio into the MacBook Pro, and that's how I'll capture those analog synths. In the UVI case, it will be software emulations of these old mini Moogs and all these other types of and ARP Odysseys, and so either way, I'll probably use a combination plus some form of drum loops or something to do the drum parts, and then I'm going to do all the bass lines with a gorgeous soul bass from UVI. And then everything in between, of course, acoustic piano, Rhodes, run through a whole bunch of pedals to get you your phaser and your flanger and your compression and all that. So Rhodes, Wurlitzer when it's appropriate. Supertramp put Wurlitzer on the map. Thank you, Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson. And then all kinds of other instruments in between, maybe some clavinet, whatever. But it'll all be instrumental jazz, designed generally to be backgroundy but interesting in places, and I'll have little solos. And I don't know yet whether I'll be able to grab some other musicians to help me. I'm sitting here in Idaho, and if my future band ever comes and sees this video, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for you. I'm looking for a drummer. a bass player. Hopefully twins separated at birth and they went off and became a great drummer and a great bass player, and then they reunite. Or hey, maybe you never separated at birth, but you're twins and you can read each other's mind. Drummer and a bass player, guitar player that thinks in terms of jazz, classical, and some blend in between. And then the ideal cherry on top, and I'm going to do all the keyboard parts, okay? And the ideal cherry on top would be a flute, Indian flute, sax, whatever, piccolo, all those other weird little instruments that can do melody and solos. And I want to do our own stuff, like stuff from Palouse, stuff from Idaho that's going to be coming up, whatever they help write. I just think that would be a kick. And yes, I want us recording somewhere out here, and we'll record stuff and give it to the world. So if you are the future bandmate, hello, and I hope to meet you someday. Or it won't happen, and I'll just continue to be alone. Tear. All right, way too long, but it's so beautiful. I just felt like I could talk to you. A lot of stuff on the horizon. So stay tuned. Go out to kevinselby.com, and that's where I usually put news, and that's where new albums show up. Immediately in the hopper, Acoustic Hymns Volume 4, and then I don't know what's going to happen. I might go off into the smooth jazz thing. I might go off into Volume 5, 6, and 7 of the hymns. I just don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Please, if you're the praying type, pray. Pray for me that I do the right thing and that I do it in the right order and how God wants it to be done. All right. Here, October 6th, 1 year after Into the Green was produced out here. Kevin Selby signing off. We'll chat at you another day.